Hey, shalom, 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 lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hayawam tawab la atham za akhyakam yawam or Chagadal, Charlotte, which is good day. This is your brother Yawam from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatham kayah malakat hashemayim kwarab. Repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call layam la la b'nawa Yahweh bahasham Yahweh shai bahasham rocha kodash. Wamashana la zakonim na wamala akim shor Chagadal, which is all praises to our Father Yahweh, which means He exists bahasham. In the name Yahweh Shai delivers in double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. All right. This is a term for structural load, and it says structural loads for a house are the forces applied to its components, comprising dead loads, permanent materials, live loads, occupants, furniture, and environmental forces, snow, wind, seismic. Proper structural designs, usually aiming for a 30 to 40 PSF total live floor load, ensures a continuous load path from the roof to the foundation, preventing structural failure. All right. And it says key types of structural loads. It says dead load, live load. All right. And it says environmental loads, snow load, weight of accumulated snow on the roof, wind load, lateral and uplift forces on walls and roofs, seismic load, forces caused by earthquakes. All right. It says load path and distribution. Well, I'm going to skip down to common design standards. It says floor live load, general 40 PSF. Roof live load varies, but commonly 20 PSF or based on local snow, often reduced for slope. Safety factor, it says structures are designed to withstand maximum potential loads, not just average ones, So the reason why I want to go into this is because, when you look at the actual construction of a house, all right, it has certain materials and certain structures as to why it's in there, because it has to be able to withstand the environmental load. And some of them environmental loads is things like we got right here was, snow, wind, seismic, and various different other factors, but pretty much it has to be able to withstand. So being able to withstand, all right, ultimately in the spirit will be to have that stability. All right. And ultimately, the scriptures tell us to be of one mind. Scripture also tell us to pretty much to cleanse our way, and how we do that is essentially by building our house in the correct fashion, because right here it says structures are designed, safety factor at the bottom. It says structures are designed to withstand maximum potential loads, not just average ones. All right, those that are ultimately having the mindset of that, your lay person or, the common everyday type of mental, all right, it's building their houses up with the average type of structural loads. They're not going to withstand the adversities and stuff like that coming upon the planet Earth, So I just want to get a couple precepts just into this topic. I don't want to Zaza Banaya Apollos. Well, this is a beautiful edification to the spirit, and we'll start with Matthew Mathathia chapter 7. All right, and we'll get verse 24. All right, and it says, and the subtitle is going to read, it says the two foundations, because also going into that said something about foundation. We got to make sure that the foundation that we're building upon is the correct foundation. That foundation is going into the Lord Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. All right, I'm going to get a quick precept before I start with this. This is 2nd Ezra chapter 2. All right, we'll get verse 47. And it says, so he answered, I'm going to start at verse 44. It says, so I asked the angel and said, sir, what are these? He answered and said unto me, these be they that have put off the mortal clothing, because that represents the average foundation, the average, the rudimentary principles of the world, the things that's going to be average, that's not going to withstand the different adversities coming upon the planet Earth, as we're going to get in Matthew, the 7th chapter. All right, but it says, he answered and said unto me, these be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal. All right, that represents, the not the average, all right, above the average, which the scriptures ultimately go into, roughly paraphrasing, for us to go glory to glory, All right, we got to constantly be growing, but then also the foundation has to be in the correct fashion. But it says, and have confessed the name of the Most High, and now are they crowned and receive palms. Then said I unto the angel, what young person is it that crowneth them and giveth them palms in their hands? So he answered and said unto me, it is the Son of the Most High, whom they have confessed in the world. Then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord. That stiffness, that sustenance, that stability comes from the Lord Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, the true foundation. All right, because as we're going to go into, all right, those that have that the average foundation, they're not going to withstand the chance. So this is Matthew 7:24. It says, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I would liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. All right, and a rock ultimately, let's get this word for rock. All right, this word for rock, all right, it reads, it says Petra. It says metaphorically, like a rock by reason of his firmness and strength of soul, so we got to make sure that we're building upon the Lord Yahweh Shai, all right, because spiritually he represents that strength of soul and that firmness, that stability, all right, that can withstand that structural load as to the adversities that's coming upon the planet Earth, all right, the said evils, the said perils, all right, the elect are ultimately going to be protected, because they chose to build the true foundation, all right, so it says, reading it again, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. All right, and those essentially is them environmental loads. All right, the different adversities. All right, because we got the actual building of a house, all right, with the structural loads and stuff like that, are the environmental loads. All right, well, it's environmental loads, all right, in prophecy that's going to happen upon the planet Earth, you see, because the scriptures say that, all right, the Lord ultimately is going to visit the world, all right, because essentially people have been walking in great pride, as pursuant to 2nd Esdras, the 8th chapter and the 50th verse, so being that the Lord is bringing judgment, all right, those is going to be covered. Again, it's going to be the elect, because they chose the correct foundation. So it says, and the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock, all right, the Lord Yahweh Shai. And everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand, all right. They chose the average, they chose the layperson's mind, the layperson's mental, the common mental, all right, that worldly mental, all right, that's not going to withstand, all right, the environmental loads that's coming upon the planet Earth. Verse 27, it says, and the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it, because they didn't ultimately choose that true foundation. They wanted to choose, the things that made them feel good, all right, whatever that is, all right, and that ultimately was their demise. So let's also get this. We'll get Proverbs, Mashal, chapter 24. We'll start from the top, or verse 3. It says, through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established, because you could just throw together a house, you see, but ultimately what's going to be that house that's going to be established, all right? What's going to be the house that ultimately is able to appreciate with value, all right? Verse 3, it says, through wisdom is an house builded, all right? This is the correct way that we're supposed to build our houses, all right, being our spirit, all right, through wisdom. It says, and by understanding it is established, by understanding, by the true wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of the scriptures, all right, it's established, all right? That's ultimately the true foundation right there, all right? Established, it says, kawan, it says to be firm, be stable, be established, be secure, all right? We ultimately secure ourselves and direct ourselves aright, all right, by essentially subscribing to this truth. So it says, verse 4, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. All right, and those chambers is talking about those inner rooms, and the chambers are being filled with the precious and pleasant riches. All right, the fear, all right, the faith, all right, and the precepts. That's ultimately the precious and pleasant riches, you see, because it also mentions some other types of loads. You had the structural loads, and then you had the dead, I think it said live weight. I'm gonna go back to it. It says going back up, it says live weight, which would be people, furniture, appliances, stuff that can pretty much move. All right, that's the live weight. So the live weight in this sense, all right, it says, verse 4, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. All right, those the things that's inside the chambers, the rooms, all right, ultimately is that inner man. All right, again, the faith, the fear, all right, respect, courage. All the spiritual attributes are essentially being replacing what was old, which is now new, or that new man in the Lord, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. And that's ultimately how, the elect is ultimately going to stand, as we got in 2nd Esdras, the 2nd chapter and the 47th verse. Verse 5, it says, a wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. All right, because ultimately we understand that it's the wisdom that's going to prevail. All right, that's why it says in scriptures like this. We'll get Bon Sirach, chapter 19. All right, and we'll get verse, verse 11, verse 20, verse 22, excuse me. It says, the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, neither at any time the counsel of sinners prudence. All right, it's because when we look at the ways of old, all right, even with houses, the houses in the ways of old, they was built to last. When we look at this temporary way of how Esau builds houses, they're not built to last. They're very temporary. So All right, what was synonymous with the old way of building houses, all right, is that in this example it says the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, because true wisdom is ultimately going to sustain a house, all right, and ultimately through true wisdom, all right, that's showing prudence, as the scriptures is going to go into. Bonsarah 19 and 22, it says the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, neither at any time the counsel of sin is prudence, all right, because and also just going into that, kingdoms and houses are essentially continued through wisdom. All right, and going back to the example of how Esau builds houses, he uses wickedness, and what we see from the house that he has built, all right, ultimately is going to be destroyed. Because when you liken that example as to the ones of old, all right, the houses nowadays, all right, yeah, they might withstand for a little bit, but they're not ultimately in the end built to last. All right, and when we go back to the example of the wisdom, all right, wisdom ultimately is proven. All right, I'm gonna get a quick precept real fast. This is Psalms chapter 19 and verse 7, and it says, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple." Is sure. All right, the ways of the Lord is a sure foundation. You can't go wrong in trusting in wisdom. All right, this little season, this period of time to where everybody had this mindset adverse to the scriptures, ultimately was just for a short season, all right, because of who's in rulership, but ultimately how we are supposed to build, all right, is in wisdom. I'm gonna get one more and that'll be it. But this is Psalms Tahoyam chapter 119. We'll get verse 9 that says Bayat. All right, Bayat is the word how you say house in Hebrew, Bahalashwan Kwadash in the Holy Tongue. But it says Bayat, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way. All right, so how ultimately, let me get this in the NLT. All right, it says, how can a young person stay pure? All right, by obeying your word. All right, it says, wherewithal shall a young man cleanse his way? All right, because we're going to a house. It says, by taking heed thereto according to thy word. So ultimately, to cleanse ourselves from the things that we learned of the world. All right, and our house being built in the incorrect fashion. All right, how essentially we build our house the correct way is essentially by subscribing to this truth. That's ultimately what makes us that new man in the Lord, Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. And that's going to be the house that ultimately withstands the environmental loads and things that are brought upon, the planet Earth, So just want to go into that, Adawan Tazaza Banai Apollos, where there was a beautiful edification to the spirit. Adawan Tazah Adam Yashi Awam Tawab, Lord as well. You have a good day. Wa Shalom Makam, which is peace into you all. Shalom, shalom.